Hello, and thank you for joining me for another episode of the Finish More Music podcast. So I thought I would talk about the subject of creative burnout in this episode. This is a very real thing where you can enter into a slump that lasts for months and months and can really impact your creativity. But it can be avoided and it can be quick to recover from when we go into a slump. And I wanted to share a bunch of things that I've noticed, both in terms of my coaching, but also in terms of my own creativity, to help you avoid falling into this trap, which is very, very real. And it's easy to get caught up in if you're not aware of it and you're not mindful of it. So first of all, let me just get clear on what I mean by this. For me, creative burnout is when we reach a stage where we have an extended period where we really aren't feeling it. We're feeling very flat. When you go into the studio, you're not able to connect very well with what you're doing, feeling very despondent about it. It is not just a situation where we have a period of time where the output that we're creating, so in this instance, the music that you're writing, isn't meeting your expectations. That is part and parcel of being a creative. Sometimes your output is like, wow, my gosh, that's awesome. I've really cracked this. I've cracked the code. It's going to be like this forever. Other times it's like, yeah, this is stable. The ship is steady. Things are going about as they have been going. And other times it's like, my gosh, what was I thinking? What's happening? Have I lost it? Have I ever had it at all? All of those battles that we have in the world of creativity. Your output will fluctuate, and it's important not to attach ourselves to the output. That, however, is very different just from the continual feeling of being a bit flat and uninspired and uninterested in what we're doing. And that's what I liken to when we're starting to slip into and potentially go over the edge into burnout, which is when you get really despondent and you feel like that for an extended period of time, which of course has a much larger negative impact on your creativity. So if you are starting to feel despondent and flat and it's going on for a week, maybe pushing on for a couple of weeks, I think that's probably a strong indicator to take some course of action. And the courses of action and the things that I've discovered that have really helped me and have helped people that I coach is the topic of this podcast. And they really make the difference between, a quick recovery, a quick turnaround if you're feeling like that, and then a longer creative slump that can have a much more detrimental impact on your output in the studio. So the first thing that I'm going to say is going to seem really blindingly obvious, but it's amazing how many people don't do it. And I'll explain for why a lot of people don't do it. And that is simply taking a break. It seems really obvious. Okay, I'm not feeling this. I'll take a break. However, one of the things that can really go against you in this instance is your internal inner bully, that voice that's always with you, that can either be a coach and be on your side, or a bully and be very rigid and say things to you that you would never dream of saying to other people. And so you're like, okay, I'm struggling here. I'm not feeling this. Maybe I should take some time out. And it's saying you're lazy. It's calling you a slacker. It's saying things like you must be productive. If you're not filling every single hour of your time on the planet and every moment that you could possibly have in the studio at maximum productivity, you're a slacker, or you're too slow, or you're not good enough, or you're not cut out for this. You've got to stay there and bite down on the gum shield and just keep at it. Now, here's a huge hint for you on this. If that internal voice that we all have is speaking in a way that puts you under duress, i.e., it's very rigid. You must do this because. You must not do this. You should do this. You ought to do this. You need to do this. If it's not giving any choice points, if that's how you're speaking to yourself, okay, you're not giving yourself any choice points, then that's putting you under duress. And that will lead to resentment. The continually pushing on and on and on, even though it's devoid of any joy and interest and life in the studio, will create resentment. And that's a surefire way that you're then going to start disliking what you're doing and really get into the creative burnout and the disinterest. Now, if I flip that around, and if you're speaking to yourself as an inner coach, that's when you're going to bring choice points. Things don't happen under duress. You haven't got your hand up behind your back, and the handcuffs on, getting shoved into the metaphorical police wagon. You've got choice points. I could take a break. I could continue, and I'll talk about some ways that you could continue that could help you get through this. Or actually, I could take a break. That's my choice. I can be intentional about this. If I take 2 weeks off, my music's still going to be there when I get back. Maybe this is for the best. What do I choose to do without the internal narrative and the name calling and the self-doubt and all of those things that the bully brings with it? So it's a good way to differentiate how you're talking to yourself. If you're bullying yourself, you're putting yourself under duress, you're giving yourself no choice. If it's your coach, it's choice points. It's kind and compassion. Okay, this isn't working out. How would you speak to your best friend, your loved one? Things aren't working out. I'm struggling here. I'm not enjoying this at the moment. Be curious. I wonder what could be driving that. Maybe it's a good idea to take a break. I could choose to take a break, or I could choose to carry on and try this. What do I choose to do? What does that look like? Okay, intentionally, I'm going to do that thing, and everything's going to be okay. Now, there's great benefits to taking a break when you're feeling like this, as well as the hitting the reset button and getting out of the studio. It can also give you time to focus on the areas of your life that maybe you've been neglecting. So there can be things like relationships or other interests or exercise. Sometimes we can get so tunnel visioned as creatives. It's our passion. It's what lights us up. We love creating stuff. But sometimes it can take over to the detriment of other things. And I always talk about the idea of keeping all of the plates spinning, because that is what life is, and creativity is a part of life. It's not isolated, and in the same way that when things aren't going well for you creatively, it can impact everything from relationships to work, your general mood, the way you view other people, yourself, the world, can all be heavily impacted. So the other side of things is true. We all know what it's like to have a Barney with a loved one, with a partner, have some kind of ill feeling, or something goes wrong at work, or something goes wrong with our finances, and how that impacts being in the studio. So we all know that that's true. So having a break can often be an opportunity to have a holistic view at life and say, well, you know what, I haven't quite been nurturing this area of my life. I'm going to spend some time there. And here's the deal. Art is a reflection of life. And you will have very little to create about if you are not living, if you are not feeding all of the different areas of your life. So take some time to live. Maybe that's what you need. You need the break. You need to just leave music behind. Perhaps that's what's best for you in this moment. It will be there when you come back. And often it is the right course of action. And one of I think the things that the traps that we can fall into is to say, but if I take a break, I won't recover from that. I'll be too slow. I won't hit my goals. I won't hit this. But consider it. Keep hammering away at 5-10%, hoping it's going to get better for months and months on end. Or take a week or a couple of weeks off and come back at 90 to 100%. That version of you is very quickly going to take over from the one who's slogging it. And not only that, is going to be happier, more excited, more inspired, and maybe is going to bring some brand new exciting ideas back into the studio that wouldn't have been there otherwise. There's absolutely nothing wrong with taking a break. Often it is the optimal choice. Now, one of the things you can do when you're taking a break, or if you carry on choosing to write, that's closely related to this, is feeding your muse. So I've mentioned this in episode 114, where I talk about creative connections. So I recommend checking that out, because I go deep into how you can actively and intentionally use this to your advantage to create new, innovative, exciting music, and to stretch yourself, and also to help you find your own unique sound in the world. Feeding the muse is simply outside of your writing time, whether it's in this intentional break or you're going to carry on, writing the music, but you're going to say, I'm going to try and kickstart this. I'm going to add a little bit of fuel to the fire here. So outside of the reading of your writing time, it's doing something that isn't musically related, but that can spark inspiration and excitement. This could be things like reading books. It could be engaging in other art forms, whether you're doing them or whether you're going to a gallery, for example. Maybe you could be watching films and movies. And there's a big difference, right, between intentionally saying, you know what, I'm going to set aside this time to watch this movie or that movie, and being lazy and procrastinating. I was going to go in the studio, but I can't be bothered. I'll flop on the sofa and stick on Netflix. Very different. That word intentional, you're hearing me use it a lot. It's really important in this instance. Intentionally doing other things to light you up. Maybe you could make a commitment to do one new activity every month. And that could be something like totally out of your comfort zone, something extreme, skydiving, abseiling, I don't know, running one of these bonkers type marathons through the mud and the barbed wire and the whatever else, a tough mudder I think they're called, things like that. It could be something that really pushes you outside of your comfort zone, or it could be as simple as saying, hey, let's try a new restaurant, maybe try a new cuisine. Maybe try cooking something new that you've never done before. So something that, again, is just new and bringing new ideas into your mind. Because here's the thing. Sometimes, as with episode 114, you can be really intentional about trying to take these things into the studio to build creative connections. Other times, the magic is happening in our subconscious mind. We don't even know that it's going on. But it will then kickstart things in the studio, and things just suddenly, we're more alive, more things are happening. It's more exciting, it's more interesting, and you're not even sure what the cause is. Or you know what it is in this case because you're feeding your muse, but you don't know the magical, mystical things that are going on in your subconscious mind that are actually impacting your creativity. So it's really about having a life outside of the studio that's fun, that's challenging, that's new. Variety is the spice of life, right? That isn't centered around music. And in doing so, you'll find that it's going to light you up in the studio. And it's something you could start doing now that might even head these slumps off at the pass. But if you are experiencing it, you could do this in a break, an intentional break, or just start adding it into your routine. It's amazing how this can impact your creativity in the studio. Now, on that note, if we talk about staying in the studio, one of the things that is often responsible for creative slumps that I coach a lot of people through that I work with is that they've got themselves into a position where what they're doing is no longer challenging enough to have their creativity flourish. So let me just dive in on that, right? The idea here is that if we continue to keep doing the same thing, it will become boring and uninspiring. And if we do something that is no longer challenging to us because we've done it again and again, and creativity is all about bringing new things into the world in new ways, if we keep doing the same stuff, we're not likely to be challenging ourselves and pushing ourselves beyond our skill set. So one way to deal with that is to diversify. Bring in something that is unfamiliar to you. So what's same old for you? We don't need to challenge too much, because then what happens is the challenge then comes way beyond your skill set in the studio, and that's when you get overwhelmed. So a lot of beginners really struggle. I'll get this plug-in, that plug-in, I'll get this. In fact, a lot of people who I wouldn't class as beginners, who've been writing music for many, many years, and they join FMM, and one of the things we do straight away is look at, okay, where's all the overwhelm? What can we strip back to get to the core of what's going to light you up in the studio? Because if your mode of operation is new plugin, new synth, new piece of hardware, now I'll try and write this genre, now I'm going to go over to that one, now I'm going to watch this tutorial, you're creating a challenge that is significantly beyond your skill set. We can't manage that. If your plugins are a mess, your samples are a mess, and you've got millions of them, it's too challenging to find what you want. So it goes beyond your skill set, you get overwhelmed and you get fed up. Well, the flip side of that is not challenging enough. seen it all, done it all before, and diversification will really help. So bringing in something that's unfamiliar, but not going bonkers, bringing in too many things. So maybe now is a good time to grab that synth you've got on your hard drive that you haven't used, or maybe to look at bringing something new into the studio. Now might be a good time to experiment with a different creative direction. What happens if I try programming my drums in this way? Maybe you're someone who always does it with MIDI. Well, what happens if I bring some loops in and I try that? Maybe try a different genre for a while to get your kick started, or take an aspect from a different genre that you like and bring it into your music, or something another producer is doing. I like that sort of particular vibe that they're getting there. How could I capture that in my own music? Not copying them, but bringing the vibe across, the thing that I like. And oftentimes, by doing that, it's bringing the challenge up. It's something new we haven't done before. We're not familiar with it. So the challenge goes up, and now we've got an exciting game to play rather than something that's boring us. So that diversification is something you can do in the studio without having to go outside to look at doing new things. And often it's the answer. You'd be so surprised at how a couple of little tweaks can make all of the difference. And feeding into that is the idea of collaborating. One of the great ways of bringing diversity in is to collaborate. And a lot of people, I guess, stay in their shell a little bit with these things. And as a result, we saw certainly over lockdown the impact of that, where people being more isolated than ever. People struggled with their mental health, struggled with their motivation, struggled with inspiration. Collaboration is a great way to move past that. Music production and oftentimes creativity is quite a lonely thing to do. So being in a community where you connect with people is amazing, and then taking that a step further to collaborate, whether it's in person or it's jumping on Zoom, not only are you now leaning into that power of diversification, a new way of working, a new person, a new workflow, new sound, a new direction, all of these things you've never seen before, and you're bouncing backwards and forwards with someone, but you now have all of the amazing benefits of socializing, of having a laugh, of connecting with another human being who's passionate about what you're passionate about. Someone you could build a relationship with, and maybe if you are then in a slump, you can talk it through. It's amazing how many times people say, yeah, me too, and this is what I tried. And then you try it and it solves it for you. So for me, collaboration is huge. It's something we're massive on inside FMM. We run collaborative challenges regularly, teaming people up, helping them to write music, giving them new different ways of writing, things that will stretch them, things that will expand their creative thinking, grow their technical skill set, often leading to like getting releases through our label affiliation, because those sparks just keep things going. They keep you lit up, and when you come out the collaboration, you're on fire again in the studio for your solo productions. So the 4 things that I've really mentioned there are taking a break, feeding your muse either during the break or whilst you continue to write, making sure you diversify and keep the challenge fresh, but not diversifying so much that you get overwhelmed, and then the power of collaboration. One thing that I really think is very important for me to finish on here is the going back to this idea of the totality of your life and who you are impacting your creativity, is just to drop a note in here about taking care of yourself physically and mentally. Some people don't do well because they don't feel well. I did a podcast on this as well. If you are not taking care of yourself, if your energy levels are low, your focus levels will be low. If you are in pain, you've got aches, niggles, tightness, you're not sleeping well, that is going to flow into every different aspect of your life, including the studio. And absolutely, that will lead to you feeling down and disheartened and not feeling it and not engaging and not being excited about writing music. So just mini little breaks in your day for self-care, they pay back so much. The dividends of 10 minutes of meditation or practicing mindfulness. Again, it's, but I don't have 10 minutes. Trust me, you'll get hours and hours back a day if you keep at it. hours and hours back. If you have a morning routine, episode 103, I talk about my morning routine. If you're interested in ideas of how to kickstart this and the things that I've found most effective, it's something I've been doing for many, many years. Waking up, exercising, simply stretching, a bit of yoga can help release all of this tension that builds up. If you get outside, if you're an office worker, an entrepreneur, a creative, and you spend most of your time in a chair looking at your computer, my gosh, it's so important to get outside and get your body moving. Music is about moving your body. If you're sitting there all rigid, it's just not going to flow. It's madness to think that it will. Maintaining a balanced diet. It's another way you can maximize your output. Having that energy, nutrition, so important. And this idea, some people don't do well because they don't feel well. It's not always the stuff that you can see and feel. It's not like, I'm so tired today. It could be, but it doesn't have to be that. I'm suffering from indigestion because I've just scoffed down a ginormous Indian meal and eaten far too much than I should. Whatever it might be, something spicy, Those things can be really obvious. But actually, if you take a minute right now and close your eyes, preferably if you're not driving or operating heavy machinery, but if you close your eyes, I'm just about to finish this episode now, and just scan down from the top of your head through your body, I guarantee you'll notice aches, pains, tightness, stiffness, all sorts of things that you're not consciously aware of, but that are distracting you in the day. So looking to fix those things. How do I release some of that tension? How do I loosen some of those muscles? How do I, make sure I'm hydrated because I didn't realise I had a faint headache? All of those things, they're so easy to do. They're easy not to do, but they're so easy to do, and they'll contribute massively to your creativity, your fun, your enjoyment in the studio. So if you experience creative burnout, then it can floor you for months and months and months, and then you've got the whole thing of getting back on track as well, and it can be quite a demoralizing and frustrating experience. But with a few really quite simple strategies that, just to pick a couple of the things that I've outlined here, it will massively help you to recover from any slump you do experience before it becomes a burnout, or to avoid it in its entirety. Small, fun, challenging things that you can do that take a short period of time that can save you a long period of frustration and potential suffering later. So I hope you've found those things useful. If you've got any additional techniques, strategies that you've come across, I'd love to hear about them. Do hit me up on Instagram, please, at @IamKeithMills with a DM. I'd love to hear about them. If I get a few of them, then let's stick them on another podcast episode, because you never know that rock that you cast into the pond, how far the ripples will go and who you could affect with this. So if you've got an idea, it's your choice. Keep it to yourself and have the positive impact only for you, or serve other people by picking up your phone, dictate a quick message into it and ping it to me on Instagram at @IamKeithMills, and I can pass that on to other people, and that rock that you cast into the pond could lift other people up who are struggling and having a difficult time. So show notes, finishmoremusic.com/159 if you want to go over anything that I've spoken about here. I hope that this resonated with you, that you took some value from it, even if it was just a sliver from one of those ideas that you feel can impact your creativity, your output, and your chances of achieving the results that you really want. Stay safe. Until next time, happy music making.